Good morning and welcome into our second mini lesson where we are outlining the Priestess Path curriculum through dipping our toes into some exercises and some information so you can really see behind the scenes what this is all about. So today's lesson is about the elements, and in all honesty, the elements are the heart and soul of my practice and really are used in so many different facets of magic and just meditation and spiritual practice. So each element could really have an entire class all for itself, like hours long class all for itself, because they are so juicy and so rich. So I want to just name that up front because we are not diving in that deep today. We are just going to barely scratch the surface of the why do we use the elements, kind of a couple things about each element that I'll share with you around their energies. And then we'll do a little breathing exercise working with our breath in connection with the elementals. So as I said, the elements are really the heart of my practice. I keep doing this, like it's the heart of my practice. And that is because they are the energy. They are everything that is around us. We are them. They are us. When we think about the elements, we're thinking about air, fire, water, earth, and spirit or ether. There are different cultures around the world that also use elements, but might use them differently. So in Chinese medicine, we have metal and wood as elements that get included. And they might, in different cultures and different practices, have different color associations. You might have different directional associations. The ones that I'm going to share with you are actually pulled very much from Wicca. Even though I don't consider myself Wiccan, this is the way that I learned working with the elements, and I'm just passing that on to you. As with anything I share with you ever, take what works and leave what doesn't. If I tell you, oh, a color associated with this is this color, and you're like, that's not the color I associate, leave it. Because at the end of the day, as we talked about in our first lesson, your body is the channel, right? You are the channel for energy that you're working with. And the more you work with the elements and your personal relationship with those elements, the more powerful they will be. So if you have a color that works better for you for air than the one I'm going to mention, then use that when you're calling on air, because that's going to be the connection that happens for you on a physical level. And therefore it's going to have a lot more oomph in whatever workings you're doing. Now, the elements, not only are they everywhere and around us and part of the natural world and part of us, but they each have different energies to them. And when we're casting a spell or creating a ritual or trying to manifest something or banish something, we might need a little extra energy. And pulling on a different element for those energies could be really helpful. An example might be that I personally love to water scry. And water is a symbol of psychic intuition, that type of energy. So it can be, there's many other ways to scry. But for me, I really like to use water and I like the fluidity of it. And so that might be a connection where I'm calling in the energy of water to help me drop into those intuitive feelings and thoughts and information. So that's just one little example. But maybe you're trying to make something happen. And so you're calling on fire to help with motivation moving forward. So really cultivating your personal relationship with elements is important because, again, your associations might not be the same ones that I have. There might be overlap, they might be similar. And in the Priestess Path, we do go a lot deeper into these different elements to help you to build that relationship. But for today, outside of this time together, you might sit down and just make a list of like, what are all the things I associate with each of these elements? And just notice what you notice. And as you make those associations, how do those things show up in your day-to-day life as you're cruising around? Do you tend to do activities that lean heavier on the things you associate with earth or water or fire or air? And it can also be really fun. Another layer of this is to look at your astrological chart and go, what elements are heavy in my astrological chart and which ones might be a little more like missing? Like I'm missing some water in my chart. So I'm always seeking water everywhere I go because I'm just all the fire and all the earth. Anyway, so the elements can come in all of these different layers. And if you have done ritual with me at any point in time, or if you've attended any kind of public ritual, witchy ritual, Likely you have heard people call in the directions. They invoke the directions at the four corners when they're casting a circle. And that was a tradition that I have learned to practice magic in. And so it's one that I continue to do. But as I mentioned before, other cultures, different traditions, they might do that differently. They might call in different energies for those directions, different colors. I learned one practice where you called in not just the directions, not just north, south, east, and west, but like northwest and southeast. And like, so you called in all the directions to create your container. So there's a lot of different ways that this gets played with, and the elements are part of that. So let me talk about that for a minute. In the tradition I was trained in, which was the reclaiming tradition, or studied in, I guess. I have definitely learned from a lot of different traditions over the years, but most Wiccan traditions that I have looked at use these associations. So east and air are together, south and fire, west and water, earth and north, and then center of the circle is spirit or ether. And most likely, you know all about what air, fire, water, and earth are. Probably, if I just say those things, you have an association. You might not have something for spirit. You might be like, well, what is spirit exactly? And I like to think of spirit as source. So whatever that word is to you, God, goddess, creator, creatrix. So that's that energy. But overall, it's a sense of unity and love, right? When we think about source or spirit, it's this thing that connects all of us. It's this web that connects all of us. This is my framework, obviously, that I'm sharing with you. So if you're hearing me say these things and you're like, no, it's not, that's okay. That's your framework, and that's important for you to know. But for me, that's how I look at it. It's this all the things, all the connections, all the love that bring us together, and that resides at the center of our circle. So I'm just going to briefly touch on each element, and then we'll do a little exercise together. So each element has different properties. As I mentioned, they each have a direction. So I generally begin with air in the east, because east is the place of new beginnings. It's where the sun rises and the moon rises. And so that's what I tend to think of it in terms as. So air is a place of new beginnings. It is also connected to thought and aha moments and communication. In the tarot deck, it is connected to swords, the suit of swords. It is associated with the color yellow often. So sometimes that resonates for me and sometimes it doesn't, but that's just sort of the traditional Wiccan association is yellow with air. And then fire, we have to the south, red. Red is the fire color. Big surprise. Red, orange, all of those hues. And then it's really about action. It's about movement. When you look at a fire, you see that movement that's happening, right? It's flickering, it's going. Even in those little coals that are just glowing, there is this sort of movement and vibration occurring. So when we work with fire energy, when we think about fire energy, we're thinking about motion. And that can come out in a variety of different ways. And you will hear things like sensuality, play, dance, anger, like all this big energy movement is really what we associate with fire. In the tarot deck, wands are what we associate with the element of fire. So just to keep that in mind. And I did mention the direction of south. It makes me think of like the Southwest, like desert land. Fire makes me think of the desert and like all the little creatures like reptiles and stuff that need the heat to be able to cruise around. That's where my mind goes. But you might go someplace totally different when you think about fire and south. So next we have water, which is associated with west, which of course here on the West Coast, I'm like, well, duh, because it's the ocean, but that's here on the West Coast. If you're living on the East Coast, you're like, why west? Shouldn't it be east? But water is associated with the west. The color is blue. It is really associated with feelings. And I mentioned earlier, like psychic, intuitive feelings as well. So getting information in that deep knowing way, not like messages coming in from communication, talking, but like that knowing that happens. That's really the water element. It's also about flow, feeling and flow. Um, I often think of water as being associated with grief and surrender. Like, when you're buoyant in a pool of water and you're just floating, and there's that sense of like just being held. That's what I often associate water with personally. Um, in the tarot deck, it is associated with cups, vessels, depending on your deck, horns, but a vessel of some sort. So when we're working with water, we're thinking about what are we trying to maybe flow easier with? Where are we trying to let go a little bit and surrender? Um, and so you can work with water in that way. And whatever, there's many other ways as well, but I'm just giving you the little bits here. So Earth, north, when we think about Earth, we might immediately think green, or if you're here where I am, you might immediately think brown because everything's real dry uh, in the peak of summer. Um, but green is generally the color associated with it, although you might even just think earth tones, whatever that means for you. It is the foundation. So the energy of earth is really this foundation. It's this root. I sometimes think about it in terms of ancestry and history because I think about the earth and how it has all the striations that tell the story of what has come before. It is also often associated with things like caves, that sort of going into those deep places to meditate, for quiet, for rest. Um, the wild thing about Earth is that it also creates earthquakes here in the real world, and earthquakes create mountains. So you have with every element, I didn't mention this with the other ones, but every element does have this spectrum on which it exists of, for example, Earth, stillness, solidity, foundation, holding ground, and then this just total shaking, stirring everything up. And every element has that potential. So when you work with an element, you want to be real specific about what you're calling it. What energy of this element am I going to work with today? And in the tarot deck, it is associated with pentacles or coins or discs, the round ones, which in tarot are actually often tied to things like career, money, home. So you really, again, those root things that you might need for survival. Um, and then for center, for spirit, I mentioned already that is really about connection. I wrote down seen and unseen because I feel like it really bridges those worlds between the seen and unseen. It's sort of that timeless place, timeless energy. And the color associated with it is often white or indigo. Um, or even just, I almost think of clear, which I know is not a color, but I think about like a clear quartz crystal that just like glass, right? Um, that is often what I feel drawn to when I'm working with the energy of center and spirit, or rainbow, something that's multifaceted because it does feel that as well. So that's another energy you can play with. And again, that is going to have a lot of different pieces for different people. Um, and and again, a list can be really helpful to help you begin to develop these relationships. So what we're going to do now is a little bit of breath work just to play with connecting with these energies. Breath work, I know for some people can create a sense of anxiety, like trying to work with the breath and change it can be like, whoa, I don't like how this changes. Or I know for me, if I have to do square breath where I'm breathing in for 4, holding for 4, letting out and doing that whole like 4, 4, 4 hold and exhale and inhale, that actually makes me anxious because it's really far away from my normal breathing pattern. I'm a much slower breather than 4 counts. So it makes me start to feel like I'm chest breathing. So I'm saying this in advance. If any of these things don't feel comfortable to you, don't do them. Do your thing. because I want you to connect with the elements in the way that feels right to you. And these are just suggestions and ideas. So to begin, I'm actually going to invite you to close your eyes and just bring your awareness inward for a moment. If you'd like, you can join me in taking 3 deep breaths here just to sort of cleanse our palate. And then let your breath just move back into its own rhythm, its own cadence, wherever it's at today. And then we're going to go ahead and begin to connect with air. And to do that, first, perhaps just feel the air on your skin. Maybe by feeling that air on your skin, you can begin to feel and notice what the temperature is, how that might be similar or different to your body temperature. And then draw your awareness into your breath here and begin to feel the air as it moves into your body, breathing in through your nose and out of your body. You might breathe out through your mouth. Continuing in this pattern, breathing in through your nose, slow and steady, and out through your mouth. Noticing the sensation of air as it moves into your nose, perhaps even noticing a temperature change as it comes into your body and into your lungs. And as you exhale, you might notice that that air is a little warmer. Breathing in and breathing out. Feeling your connection to air. The air that is your breath. The air that is all of our breaths. And then take a big inhale on your next inhale. Really filling your body. And as you exhale, pretend you are the wind and blow. Letting the air move all the way out of your body and then slowly inhaling again once more. And you can be whatever kind of wind you want as you breathe out. Perhaps you're a gentle breeze, or maybe you're blowing a house down. I'll go quiet here for a moment and just let you play with this experience of breathing in and becoming the wind. And on your next exhale, you can just let your breath move back into its own rhythm, into your body's natural rhythm for this day. Noticing what you notice after connecting with air in this way. We're going to move to the south to the fire, and we're going to do a little breath of fire. So if you've never done breath of fire before, this is like panting through your nose. So you might begin, if you haven't done it, by panting through your mouth, pulling your belly button back towards your spine as you contract these short little breaths and letting your inhale come naturally as a response to that forced exhale. And then when that starts to feel familiar, you can close your mouth and do this through your nose. And as you do this breath of fire, you might even put your hand over your solar plexus or your belly and really feel that snapping of that belly back towards your spine as you force the exhale. And stopping and taking one big breath, letting it go. And feel the heat that you have generated in your core. Feel the way this heat, this fire, is radiating out toward the other parts of you. Breathing your natural breath, thanking the fire, letting it go. Perhaps feeling that heat dissipate as we move toward water. And for water, we're going to do what is called in yoga practice Ujjayi breath. This is a gentle contraction of the back of the throat so that as you breathe in, and I don't know how well this sound will translate, and breathe out, there is almost the sound of ocean waves. That slight contraction slowing your breath down as you inhale. And slowing your breath down as you exhale. And as you breathe in this way, notice what you notice. How do you feel? What thoughts creep in? How is the flow of your breath like the flow of a tide? And on your next exhale, you can go ahead and just let this all go so that the following inhale moves you back into your natural rhythm of breath. Thank you, water. Now we move into earth. And to move into earth, I like you to begin to breathe so deeply into your body that you feel your inhale move into your pelvic bowl. No need to rush or force this. You might choose to breathe only through your nose or your nose and your mouth. Do what's comfortable for you as you fill your body with this beautiful oxygen, so full that you feel the edges of yourself. Each breath bringing you deeper into you. Each breath making you more and more aware of the places you are coming into contact with that which is supporting you. More and more aware of the earth beneath you. Each of these breaths reminding you that your body is earth. And just as the earth holds the story of all that has come before, your body too holds the story of all that has come before. Let this breath root you in yourself, root you to the earth. And then on your next exhale, let it go. Inviting your next inhale into its natural rhythm once more. Perhaps even noticing that this rhythm has shifted through this exercise. And we'll move into one final breath together, final breathing exercise. And this one, for spirit, for center, we are going to incorporate our body movement into our breath. So I invite you as you inhale to bring your arms up over your head, reaching high above you. And as you exhale, reach your arms to the sides and clear all the space around you. Continuing to breathe in and reach up. And exhale, reaching out, down, just feeling the cascade of energy move through you. This combination of connection to body, breath, mind, connection to spirit. One more big breath. Feel your hands come down and down and down. And then bringing them to your heart, hand over hand. Just take a couple breaths here, feeling yourself. Feeling all these elements we've just connected with through our breath. And on your next exhale, you can let your hands fall and your eyes open. Feeling how you're feeling. So this brings us to the end of our second mini lesson, working with the elements. I hope you've had some sweet connections with those elemental energies and that you'll consider continuing this journey, making that list, noticing the elements in the world and the way you're connecting with them in yourself, and maybe even working with them in ways you didn't even fathom until today. And I will be back on Monday with our third lesson about sacred space. So until then, have fun playing with all the elementals and be well, my friends. Take good care.